Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome to the guests and friends and participants who are following us from Facebook and YouTube Live. And thank you all for joining here today for this Food for Earth G20 edition event. I'm Sara Roversi, I'm the founder of the Future Food Institute, and I'm very proud to be here to celebrate this very important gathering, but overall to start a conversation that we think is absolutely relevant for the time in history we are facing now. Before starting, I would love to involve our partners, our friends, because this year we are very honored as Italy to host the G20 summit. We consider the G20 summit as well as all the summits that our country this year is going to host, because in the next months ahead, we are going to have here COP26, but also next week in Rome is going to take place the UN Pre-Food System Summit. And so we consider our country like the crossroad of probably the most important conversation the world leaders are going to have in the next days, but not only conversations, because it's time to take action. And we consider really this opportunity to connect not only the policymakers and the leaders, the broader society. So this is the aim of Food for Earth. At the beginning of this journey, meetings that our country is involving youth, involving innovators, involve local policymakers, involve all the leaders in the food chain, but also connecting with the broader society and local communities. And so when we started talking about Naples, about the opportunity to talk about food and climate, food and environment, food and energy, of course, thinking about Naples, there were a local, very important stakeholders, that is the Città
you. which is often not linked to seasonality and territoriality, and has costs, social, environmental, that have not been correctly quantified. The Italian agriculture at its made in Italy production often make environment and social sustainability a strong point, but it's necessary to do better to be able to feed the planet by protecting natural resources, soil, water, and the biological resources, biodiversity. Not only at the level of production, but also with the food choices of the citizens, we are asked to implement the transition to achieve the One Health goal, protecting the entire ecosystem. In fact, the essential connection with the more general and comprehensive ecological transitions is evident, with which the need for a general transformation is highlighted, which must affect all sectors of life and the economy, changing the paradigm of our development model in order to reduce the impact on the environment while guaranteeing the level of well-being. The ecological transition, also known thanks to Hopkins' transition city movement, puts the emphasis on social and local innovation of the resilient territories. We must be clear that the term protection of the environment does not mean protecting only parks, greenery, and fauna, but also means completely reforming our economic model, for example, with energy efficiency across all sectors and with an enhancement of sustainable production. The role of institutions such as these Città della Scienza becomes central to accompany these profound changes that we are facing, in which the dialogue within science and societies becomes fundamental and indeed must be increasingly strengthened. We must set the necessary targets not only to be climate neutral by the middle of the century, but also to significantly reduce our greenhouse gas emissions in the next 10 years. If the world fails to drastically reduce CO2 emissions between 2020 and 2030, it will be almost impossible to stop the rise in global temperature or reach the goal of net zero emission by 2050, with all the dramatic consequences that this would lead to. This challenges the norms, and it is clear that the only ways to face it is to network and make a system with all the protagonists without exception. Thank you at all, and good working day. No, non c'è più.
No, perché ce l'ha.
Ah, ecco. Eccoci.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's absolutely the reason why we are here. We consider the role of science absolutely the pillar of this conversation. And now I really need to thank someone that is representing the organization that is hosting now here in Naples. Of course, the opportunity to host a summit like that in all our beautiful Italian cities is an opportunity for our country, but the idea of hosting all of those meetings also in undercover location, it's something I think quite a gift or a blessing. So Città della Scienza very generously said, why don't we invite all our guests in a very special location that is not one of those locations that you can easily find. And they connect us with Fondazione De Felice. And so I would love Roberto Fedele to share something, because this place needs to be underlined, I think, for the importance and the historical importance where we are.
Buongiorno e benvenuti nel teatro di Palazzo Dornano, un luogo storico, straordinario, un luogo che ha fatto la storia di Napoli. Teatro nell'accezione spagnola, luogo di feste, luogo di incontro, spazio ludico, per la corte vicereale del duca di Medina e di Anna Carafa. Un luogo poi rimasto abbandonato per secoli, fino a quando negli anni 60 non viene acquistato dal professore Ezio De Felice, che lo restaura mirabilmente e da quella data accoglie fino al 2000 lo studio di architettura del professore De Felice. Il professore De Felice lascia la volontà testamentaria di destinare questo spazio barocco straordinario a sede della fondazione in sua memoria. E oggi la fondazione custodisce l'archivio della produzione scientifica e professionale di Ezio De Felice. Vedete alla vostra sinistra, alla vostra destra, tutto l'archivio del professore che viene regolarmente consultato da studenti e studiosi. Ma c'è di più, oltre a custodire l'archivio del professore e organizzare eventi nel campo dell'architettura e della museologia, Ezio De Felice ha lasciato una volontà, direi, etica più ampia, perché la sua idea è stata quella di aprire alla città uno spazio straordinario come questo, che per secoli è stato di uso e godimento privato. Dalla famiglia Carafa in poi questo spazio era vissuto e goduto da privati. Grazie alla volontà di De Felice oggi siamo qui e il godimento di questa sala è diventato di uso collettivo, con i nostri amici, con i nostri partner, con Città della Scienza oggi, e in questo senso siamo veramente felici di ospitare un evento internazionale di grandissimo rilievo, perché in questo modo noi diamo forma e sostanza alla volontà di De Felice di aprire alla collettività questo spazio. Grazie e benvenuti.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the hospitality and for the opportunity to see this little jewel in the heart of Naples. So now we have to start to debate and think and highlight which is the importance and the nexus between food and climate, energy, and environment. With Future Food, when we started this journey, was before the SDGs were announced, before the Paris Agreement was signed, before the World Expo taking place in Italy, highlighted the deep connection between food, energy, and climate and life. When we started, we wanted really to start to connect the dots and bridge all the gaps within the food chain, understanding that there were this need. Then in 2015, the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals were announced. Always in 2015, the Paris Agreement was signed, and always in 2015, our country had the chance to host the first global event, for the first time talking to normal people, to families, kids, schools, about food, feeding the planet, energy for life. And for the first time, normal people started to be aware about the deep connection of our food choices with the impact we're making on the environment. Of course, the pandemic had an incredible role, because the pandemic has been accelerating many of the, say, the hardest and deepest issues we are facing in the global food systems, but also the pandemic had the power to make the invisible visible. And we suddenly understood that we need to take action. And in Italy, I would say, we took this inspiration, also calling an entire ministry, the Ministry of Energetic Transition, Green Transition. We need to make this transition, as you were saying. And so now we are taking this inspiration and we want to try to accelerate this transition as much as we can. Together with the Food and Agriculture Organization, that is a partner inside the Food for Earth initiative, we started really underlining which are the deep connection between food and the society. And within the Food for Earth framework, we started identifying which are the deep connection between humans and ecosystems. So identifying the issues of creating climate smart ecosystems, how we can foster regenerative life, a circular living approach, highlighting the importance of food identities and using food as a tool to heal the society, as a tool for inclusion. And then talking about prosperity and food diplomacy, because nobody highlights how many issues are behind the entire global food system, how many political issues. And it's time to make those very complex topics understandable for normal people. So what we are really trying to do is trying to make the complex food system understandable for everyone. So now I really thank the president of Fondazione Città della Scienza and the entire team of Città della Scienza, Futuro Remoto, and our partners here in Naples, Fondazione De Felice, for hosting us today. And I want to start to jump into our conversation. As you know, our event is part of the side event of the G20 summit, but also is one of the side events of Connect for Climate. That is the initiative that our Minister of Ecological Transition is hosting all over the country for the entire year, supporting the journey from now up to COP26, the pre-COP26 that is going to be hosted in our country. And now I would love to involve our first guest that is connected online. That is Professor Riccardo Valentini from Città della... Before jumping to that, we have Sabato Dauria from CNR. And so we have digitally Marina Riccaboni from CNR. As you know now, with this new life, we are dealing with this kind of events that are partially digitally, partially in presence, and we are learning a new way of interacting also in this kind of events. Okay, so let's invite our guest here present today. I would love to involve, first of all, Gramenos Mastroianni, here with me. We are in the heart of Mediterranean, and so let's start to talk about Mediterranean.
Okay.
We know how much is important Mediterranean for Europe and for the entire world, I think. And so I really would love Gramenos, that is the Secretary General of the Union for Mediterranean, to really highlight how critical is the role of Mediterranean overall when we talk about climate, energy, environment, and which are the challenges we are facing, what we can do.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. Good morning, everyone. The challenge posed by climate change, also through food to the Mediterranean, is absolutely critical. And the Mediterranean, in turn, is critical for the balances of the whole world. If you look at our region, it is the place where three continents join together. Africa, Europe, and Asia converge all on the Mediterranean. So what happens in the Mediterranean is bound to reflect on global balances. Climate has already taken a toll. If we think about Arab Springs in 2011, we were happy to interpret them as a healthy aspiration to democracy. And there's a part of truth in that. But we cannot forget that the Arab Springs were preceded by 4 years of strife in the streets, which had nothing political, nothing ideological. These were disorders because of bread. Prices of food commodities had gone up 4 times, and climate change played a role, not directly on the region. It played a role on big producers of cereals like Ukraine, Australia, the United States. But then the southern part of our region depends a lot from imports. And this increasing price, which was also determined by climate, was one of the reasons why our region started to change its balances. A direct impact by climate was crucial also in the events in Syria. The Syrian crisis has all its historical and political background. But the critical point was reached when the impact of climate change determined 4 years of unprecedented drought. This coupled with a decision to shift the Syrian farming system towards cotton from the old kind of farm, which was a family farm, and considering that cotton drinks a lot of water, determined the movement of 1.8 million people from the countryside to the cities, exactly those cities where the disorders started. And now the Mediterranean as a whole is the second fastest warming region in the world, just after the Arctic. And the waters of the Mediterranean Sea are the fastest warming waters in the world. It is not only a problem for fishes, for marine flora. It is not only a problem because the situation comes with a lot of this period. We will be confronted with 250 million people in water scarcity, or we are forecasting an accelerated sea level rise. 1 meter before the end of the century, that seems so far away, but up to 20 centimeters in around 12 years. 20 centimeters will not scare people. It's like that. What difference can it make? Maybe they think about fragile coastal cities like our precious Venice, but the point is that 20 centimeters of salty water that gets into the land sterilize agriculture. Our ancestors, the Romans, when they wanted to subjugate someone, they would defeat them in battle. But if they wanted to never hear again about a certain population, they would just spread salt on their fields. Project this 20 centimeters on the delta of the Nile, which is the heart of the agriculture of a country that has 100 million people, roughly. Well, it would salinize the delta of the Nile and jeopardize the agriculture of this country. There are many, many other disquieting forecasts, but it would be a mistake to take this situation of the Mediterranean as a collection of severe but separate problems. What climate change is doing in our region is that it is completely reshuffling the balances and the very identity on which we define who we are and what we want. Look at our region. It has something peculiar. If you look at Europe, you can easily conclude that it is a weird notion, something unusual. If we use the criteria through which we have defined all the other continents, Europe should not exist. It is just the westernmost tip of Asia. And look at the southern shore of the Mediterranean. It is Africa, but it is not Africa at the same time. There is a different identity here, and it's a connected identity between the north and the south. We are different from the rest that surrounds us. We have an identity, but what is this identity rooted in? Well, already some time ago, Montesquieu, with his climate theory, understood that we are what we are. We have a special identity, although we're not really separated from the rest by geographical barrier, because we benefit from a special climate. And it is a very special climate. In our region, the Mediterranean, which is a large closed mass of water, acted as a stabilizer. And this made climate more predictable. With the predictability of climate came the predictability of natural cycles. And this was crucial in determining the most important revolution in our history. If you go around asking people what is the most important revolution in human history, probably today they would reply the Industrial Revolution. Very important, but not as much as another revolution that occurred roughly 10,000 years ago. which was the agricultural revolution. It was the moment in which mankind shifted from being passive users of the ecosystem to managers of the ecosystem. And by the way, it happened here. It happened around the Mediterranean, in the Fertile Crescent. It happened in Anatolia. It happened in Southern Europe. Not because here there were more clever humans than elsewhere, but because here we had very special and favorable conditions. Predictability of climate. When climate is predictable, you can start managing your lands. If nothing is predictable, you have no chance to manage. Together with the agricultural revolution came some of the first great civilizations. So this is the Mediterranean, and this is the Mediterranean which is at stake with this accelerated climate change and warming of the waters. The fact that the waters of the Mediterranean are warming very quickly, as I was telling you, is not only a problem for fishes or for fauna, it is a problem for the whole identity of the region. Because a mass of water that stores a huge amount of energy reverts its function. Before, it was a stabilizer. But now, releasing energy, it becomes a machine of chaos, of unpredictability. So the comparative advantage of our region is to be gone. And also the fact that we once had a climate that united in a certain identity various groups, but now is changing, is posing more fundamental threats than water shortage or drought. We've just seen Europe as defined by its climate. Well, the unity, the relative unity of this climate doesn't exist anymore, because one pillar of our climate, which was the Azores anticyclones, intruding a region and bringing the good weather, doesn't exist anymore. It is now driven away by Saharan anticyclones. And it seems so abstract, so climatologic, but it is actually fundamental for our identity, because these intrusions split Europe in two. And this means that certain things we had in common, including interests, now are divided. I'll give you a small example. We are the second fastest warming region in the world, but there is one that is warming even faster, which is the Arctic. It comes with many problems, but also possibly with some advantages. Among them, the opening of new maritime routes on top of the Northwest Passage and on top of the Northeast Passage on Siberia. These routes, when they become viable, they represent a lot of money. They are currently estimated at $11 billion a year. We're very happy if our northern friends have at least some advantages together with all the trouble. But if these routes become viable, it means that the Suez Canal has no more value. It is the passage for 22% of international commerce. It wouldn't pass there anymore. It would pass on top of Siberia. So things that seem so abstract and scientific are already dividing us. But the good part is that there are also new phenomena with a different climate that are uniting us. Take a sector, and I see that my friend Mauro Centrito is listening, which is never considered, but it's absolutely fundamental, which is forestry. Forestry moves a lot of money, but it's never in the news. Well, in the forestry sector, we have witnessed in the last 10 years to a spontaneous increase in cooperation between the North and the South. It was not a government's decision, it was spontaneous. Why? Because people in the forestry sector are aware of ecological implications also, but above all, because species which are viable now in the South will be the one species that will save our agricultures and forests in 10, 15 years. So what lesson can we draw from this? It's an extreme threat, but it could be reverted into an extreme opportunity. Science, not policy, not ideology, tells us one thing. No one around the Mediterranean, not even the strongest, have enough means to face such a shift so fast, so vast on its own. We need each other. I need your species. Maybe you need my computers. I need your technology. And I'm thinking about the South, because when we think about technology transfer, we always have in mind the industrial countries giving some gifts to other countries. It is not true. Who has experience in managing drylands? Who has a 4,000 years experience in managing drylands? It's not us, it's in the South. If you go in the South, you see buildings in which they manage to keep temperature below zero without spending one single dollar. just using the wind. It's houses, it's stock places, and things like that. We want to go green in Europe, carbon neutral. We cannot do it without the renewables potential of the south shore of the Mediterranean. We need solar potential of Morocco and Egypt if we want to use green hydrogen to become carbon neutral in the European Union. So to make a long story short, we are in front of an extreme threat. But if we face it in the only sensible way, which is suggested by science, not by policy or by ideology, that is, we should build a cooperative economy. One in which we put together everything that we have. But if we do that, not only we diffuse climate change, but we do one more thing. Look at our wonderful region. It was the cradle of civilization, of a lot of knowledge, but it has never been a sea of peace. We are not a region of peace because we are a region of asymmetries. A region in which there are rich people and poor people. Just to give you one example, take international exchanges around the Mediterranean. 90% take place among North Stream states, 9% between the North and the South, and only 1% among South Stream states. Well, this is the real reason why we are still in conflicts. Ideologies, functional interest, history is just the surface, the foam on top of it. Well, but we do what we need to do to build that kind of economy that will finally bring to our region peace.
Thank you so much, Gramenos. You said the right development goals, partnership for the goals. We cannot achieve anything without working together. And now I think we have here with us connected Professor Riccardo Valentini, professor at Università della Tuscia, but also Nobel Prize in 2007 with the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change. So it's been a long journey, many years. Your group, your research team has been telling us since decades how fast we should move to drive this transition. And now maybe it's time to act even faster. Professor Valentini, I think you are with us.
Yes, sure. Good morning, everybody. Can you listen to me? Hello?
Good morning, Riccardo.
Okay. Good morning. And I like to share the screen, if you don't mind, briefly. Okay, I share the screen. Can you see the screen? Yes, okay. Do you see my screen? Hello?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for this invitation to this very important meeting. I like to start from one kind of very provocative picture that is a field of wheat in the middle of Manhattan in New York. And I think this is a little bit the symbol of where we are today in our discussion on the future of Earth and the important role of food and agriculture. We need really more space. We need to increase our production. We need to provide food for so many billions of people in the distant future. And we also discussed the ecological transition. It's a very important keyword today, but maybe a transition is not enough. We need to introduce another word, the metamorphosis, that I like to use, meaning that we have to really be unconventional and to be really very fast and quick to take transformation in our society, particularly in the food system that is so central to many policies, including the climate policy itself. And we know that there are many challenges. One is important, is about feeding people that is growing up to possibly 9 billion in 2050. But more than the number is the quality of population. There will be more and more people living in cities. 80% of people will live in urban areas. And this creates also another challenge for the food system. So how to feed the people that don't grow food, but they just eat. And that's really a big challenge compared with the history of our humanity. Second challenge is about land. We know that we have so shortage in land. We already have appropriated something like 73% of the total land surface for human use. We left just with about 27% of land for the future. And we have also about 30 million of hectares of deforestation every year, more than the Italian forest area that is 10 million. So how do we going to really increase the land for the future? And that's a big challenge for all of us. And finally, we also have to recognize that we have a big problem in the food systems, because we have something like 868 million people without food, so undernourished. But we have 1.5 billion of people that are overweight and obese. So how we can fit these two things, it's a paradox, because at the end we have something like 30 million people dying because for malnutrition or for excess of food. So we have also the excess of food that we have to consider. And also we produce not only food, we use land for producing, for example, biofuels. And it's again another paradox. So if we need land for food, why we should produce biofuels? And finally, the third paradox is the food waste. We have about 40% of food is wasted in different ways at the level of consumers or in the food supply chain system, so that we lost something like 30% of food. And finally, climate change is also another important pressure on our production. So I want to just make a point here that there is a role of agriculture and climate policy. Yes, for sure. Climate policy is now becoming not just an energy problem, particularly if you look at the carbon neutrality question. And we know that about 37% of greenhouse gas emissions today can be attributed to the agricultural sector, starting from the farm to the fork, as we use in Europe, this is the wording. And so it's a relevant, important element. If you look at the current estimates, a couple of papers came out with two estimates about the role of agricultural sector, considering the full chain. We have something like 14 billion of tons of CO2 or 17, 18 billion of tons of CO2. These are the two estimates for greenhouse gas emission. That is more or less equivalent to the emissions of the electricity and heat sector. So it's really important to see that there is this this equivalent or almost between the food system sector and the classical traditional sector. So something we have to do to make our food system more sustainable and more climate friendly. And this is the big discussion that also we're having in Europe. And the targets of European climate policy are quite challenging. Recently, the 55% emission reduction since 1990, this reinforced the Paris ambition by EU, and zero net emissions by 2050. But if you look at the agricultural sector in Europe, it has not followed the great indeed result of the European energy climate policy, because you remember in the strategy 2020, we already achieved the target. Actually, it was 20% emission reduction, but we achieved in 2020 even 23%, more than the target. So EU is doing a lot in different sectors to reduce the burden of climate change, but the food system is lagging behind, because if you look at the CO2 emissions per capita, in 2010 we had something like 11 tons per capita for total CO2 emissions for energy and mobility and so on, and we decreased in 2018 to 9.5. In the sector, only the sector of agriculture, we have had an increase actually of CO2 emissions equivalent per capita due to the food. So the food has increased the emissions. So the agricultural sector is lagging behind, is very resistant to changes, very resistant to modernization, to change of paradigms. So there's a lot of work to do to make it more sustainable and contributing to the climate policy. And finally, if you look at our diets, how do we eat in EU, it is a really big gap what we should do indeed. So because if we take that, ideally we should have an average of 2.3 kilograms CO2 equivalents per capita. That is what has come out from for example, the Eat Lancet report and from other studies on the sustainability of contribution of food to greenhouse gas emissions. This should be our target indeed. In reality, EU, we eat the double, 4.5 kilograms CO2 equivalents per capita per day. So that's a big gap to fill in, to reduce. So we have to reduce our, for example, meat consumption, or to improve let's say the sustainability of farm production, reduce the waste. So we have to do a lot of things to stay within the planetary boundary that is something like 2.3 kilograms of CO2. And finally, it's not an easy task because we need to combine all the systems together. So we should think at the agri-food system as a more holistic way, from the farm to the consumers, indeed. And we need to improve the knowledge, the education, so the scientific data on what we eat, what is the impact on the environment, but also to work on accessibility in terms of relieving the barriers that we have today, also economic barriers, for example, social barriers to access to food, and facilitation, of course, also the disease. So that's our three important pillars of our challenge that is not yet in place. And finally, I want to make just the last point, that is whatever we do in Europe has to be included in a global dimension. Why? Because you see this graph is showing the embedded emissions that we basically import or export in Europe. And of course, we import more than export. So we import more emission than what we export. And this is why Europe is considered, let's say, a very sustainable country, region of the world. So we can do what we want in terms of reducing the emissions of our agricultural sectors, or local products and local production and farming. But if we import food that is largely emitting greenhouse gas emission, as we do today, it's very difficult to obtain a good result. So this is why we should include the world, the global market dimension in our climate policy. Cannot be just EU to solve, for example, in this case, the food emissions problem, because we are all interconnected. Well, there are a few conclusions. It's important to reconnect the food systems all together, the actors of the food chain. We need to include also the externalities of emissions in the cost of food. That is an important discussion in G20 about the border emissions, for example. It's very, very relevant to the food system as well. Focus in urban areas is very important. How we drive solutions. We have to find solutions for urban areas. Mitigation and adaptation through technology is also very important, and a circular economy as well. So thank you for your attention, and let's try to eat better and help the planet with our food. Thank you so much.
Always brilliant and inspiring for letting us understand how fast we should run now. Thank you so much for being with us, and now we are still connected. I would love to invite here the National Center for Research. I think Marina is connected. Yes. So we have here Marina, the director of ISACOM from the National Center of Research.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be here today, and I would like to extend greetings on behalf of Tino Dauria, the Director of the Department of Biology, Agriculture and Food Science of the Italian National Research Council. Unfortunately, Tino could not be present today due to previous commitments. The themes that are being debated today are of the greatest importance. Food for Earth, food as a right for all the people on Earth, how to ensure the ecological transition of agro-food systems to feed and at the same time protect our planet. For sure, research needs to play a big role in these challenges. And the Italian National Research Council is committed to research tackling various topics related to the ecological transition. This commitment to ecological transition is strongly pursued by our president, Professor Maria Chiara Carrozza. I would like to say that our department, through the activities of the 9 institutes that take part to it, is engaged in research to develop an innovative and sustainable agro-food system able to ensure food, water, and energy to a constantly growing population. Our researcher cooperates with farms, firms to develop jointly solutions able to encompass both productivity and sustainability. The importance of the research topics related to the agro-food production has been also confirmed by the Italian National Research Program 2021-2027, which is the document orienting the politics for research in our country. Just a conclusion of my very small presentation, I would like to say that to tackle the big challenge of the ecological transition, to ensure to feed and protect our planet, it will be more and more necessary the commitment of all the components of the human society. I would like to wish you all a fruitful meeting, and I would like to thank you for your kind attention.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Maria Buffati. And now, after we are really understanding how important is give space to science when we're talking about those issues, I want to start to connect the dots and take inspiration from what Germanos Mastroianni was saying before. We need to develop a cooperative economy to accelerate the transition. And I want to start to talk about this approach in the food sector involving Simona Caselli. Simona Caselli has been the Secretary for Agriculture of the Emilia-Romagna region. And for sure, Emilia-Romagna region is one of the regions that counts a lot in terms of agriculture for the Italian country. But now she leads an European organization. She's the president of AREF. And I would love to ask to Simona, who has been living a lot the cooperative environment, how do you see this transition happening, and how do you see critical the role of Europe in this time in history? Because Europe, more than any other continent, is taking very strong responsibility, setting very high goals for the food sector, and a clear strategy for farmers.
Much, Sarah, and thank you, for organizing this side event, which is really interesting and an high-level one. I guess it was music for my ears when we have to use a shared economy, because this is really the key to cope with climate change, and also with the great challenge of producing in a sustainable way enough food to feed 10 billion people, looking at 2050. First of all, I want to present my organization. I'm president of AREF. AREF is a European organization of regions. It's called European Assembly of European Region for Fruit and Horticulture. So we are in the fruit and vegetable system, which is, of course, absolutely involved in the Green Deal and in all European politics. And we are, in a way, at the front of this particular situation we are experiencing during the pandemic, but also with this idea of making the fruit and vegetable consumption and sustainable production central for the future of humanity. Yes, you are right. Europe has a strong politics now. It's been defined in 2020, the presentation by the Vice President Timmermans of the two strategies, the Farm to Fork strategy and the biodiversity strategy. Recently, at the end of June, the new CAP, the new Common Agricultural Policy was adopted. Formally, it will be adopted in October, but we know the framework already. So we now have the rules and we have a framework and the holistic view also, which is very, very important. The problem is what Professor Valentini was reporting actually, emissions, because Europe already is a good level. Even Europe can do better, of course, but we also need to cope with this. G20 can be useful for that, of course, and I hope today and tomorrow they will arrive at some important conclusions. But last week, the European Commission put in place the CBAM system, for example, which is a system, a kind of polluter import fee that from 2023 should be paid on imported iron, steel, fertilizers, and various activities which are considered polluting. This is partly due to the fact we need to create a level playing field for European industry and European farmers, of course, but also the fact we have to accept we cannot continue to like this with gas emissions. So coming to agriculture. Agriculture, as you know, and Professor Valentini showed us very well, is responsible at a global level of 15% of gas emissions. So it's not the main responsible sector. Agriculture is doing another thing, is absorbing carbon also. This is estimated to be a 4%, but it depends on where you are and how much forest you have and so on. Deforestation is a big issue, but at world level, because in Europe we don't have a problem with losing forest. We actually, even in Italy, we increased the forest, but here a problem of forest management, because forest can be like it is, it should be managed in order to obtain results. Well, in this framework, we have to obtain some results. For example, by lowering, as it was said, pesticide by 50%, lowering the use of antibiotics in livestock activities by 50%. We have to reach 25% of organic area in Europe. So we have lots of challenges. And I think if we can combine these challenges with climate change, it's clear we need lots and lots of innovation, otherwise it would be impossible. But we also have to take the consideration, we have very small farms in Europe, in Italy even smaller. For example, Emilia-Romagna, which is above average, but we have 70 hectares average farm. In Italy, I guess it's under 15. In Germany, it's 30. But for example, in Emilia-Romagna, we have 33,000 farms. Half of them were below 5 hectares. So this is the kind of farm we have around in Italy and Europe, and we cannot forget this. Otherwise, we will take unwise policies. Those small farmers cannot be let alone. They cannot stay outside of the system, of the innovation system. So the only way to involve them is to cooperate. Cooperation is absolutely diffused in Italy. We have in Emilia-Romagna probably the most important cooperatives in the system, but we also have private producers organization. This is absolutely important, and it's very important policies are focused on this kind of aggregations, because otherwise we leave too many people outside of this engagement, and we cannot do it. So I'm strongly in favor of the new CMO policy, which is one of the 3 pillars of the common agricultural policy. And of course, I'm in favor of all the activities, the new challenges we have to face. Sometimes farmers are worried, and sometimes they also feel, in a way, assaulted by these new rules. So one of the things we should do is to stay with them, listen to them, and find solutions. Because there is it's impossible to do an ecological transition without farmers. You should do with them, not against them. Sometimes they feel that we are against them when they're doing this kind of considerations. I think this is one of the main work I'm doing in RF, where we are trying to spread innovation and make it affordable for all, and to clarify which is the future. For example, during our last assembly, I had the honor to have with us Professor Valentini, which explained this new system to put on trees in order to find out how much carbon that tree is absorbing. So to do this calculation, at the end of the calculation, you can issue the carbon certificate and you can sell them. This is completely new. So farmers don't know they should have another income possibility. So we have to explain this. There is not only the constraint of having to reduce pesticides, but there should be benefit economy, and that with sustainability, that becomes a new way of income. So this is not known by farmers. They don't know it. So we have to spread the word, we have to spread the solutions, and we have to put every farmer, even the small one, together with others in order to find other solutions. One of the things we should support a lot, of course, is precision farming. I could do enormous amount of examples, but for example, in Emilia-Romagna, we have some cooperatives in fruit and vegetable which are using precision irrigation. As you know, water management is another of the irrigation is in place by already 5 years, I guess, with every member of the cooperative, even small farmers. They have their solution, they have the measurement, they have the system connected with the cooperative ones. So everyone can do his part. but any one of them without the cooperative should have done it. So cooperative producers organization, all the value chain you can put into a contract or everything are absolutely important. They will be paramount for reaching the result. And that's one of the main points I had to do this morning. Then, and this is my last contribution, I hope in the national strategic plan we have to do, and together with us, every country in Europe have to do a national strategic plan for agriculture. I hope we will be sufficiently ambitious because there's something really new. There was a big debate about the greenwashing of the CAP. I'm not particularly convinced that there's a greenwashing. There's something which is changing deeply the habits of farmers, because, for example, in the first pillar, you used to receive some public money just because you have some hectares and you were doing your activity on them. Yes, in the last program, they put there the greening activity, but the greening wasn't effective. But today, they transform 25% of that comes only if you do an eco scheme. And eco schemes are quite demanding because the Commission published a list of eco schemes in January. I hope we should be even more productive here in Italy. For example, I'm working with some people of CONAPI and so on to find out an eco scheme of pollinators, because pollinators are really important. But we should consider this will change habits, because I don't know any farmers can let 25% of that money there. So they will be forced to change. And they will need a great assistance in innovation. We know Europe this time has doubled the amount of Horizon Europe money for agriculture, from 5 to 9 and so on, and something billions. We have lots of money also on the innovative operational group in the CAP. In Emilia-Romagna, we did 200 of them. There are lots of solutions already into the European Innovation Partnership, which is a common database, an open one. So all that open innovation should be used. And we should study all the solutions that have been found out in order to save water, lower the use of pesticides, do a livestock activity better. And I hope today here, we're discussing about energy, they will talk about also of agro-energy. Because I guess the livestock activity, which is the one that is impacting in agriculture, have the possibility to do a very important and virtuous circular activity by producing biomethane. So we have to, of course, organize also the infrastructure for that, but we already have the technology, we already have the people producing everything, so we have to put together the dots and do it finally. I guess the new recovery fund would be a great possibility for this in Italy, but also in Europe.
Thank you so much. I think that highlighting the pain point, because around the ecological transition, we need to approach the cultural transition. You've been mentioning farmers and the gap that we need to bridge to let them understand which are the dormant resources they already have available. So the carbon economy, the new carbon economy, and all the opportunities we can face with the implementation of circular economy as well, because now finally we're seeing that investing in sustainability is not something that we have to do because at the end of the year we have our corporate social responsibility report and we have to be nice. We are understanding that sustainability is a long-term investment that is part of the business strategies, because if industry want to see their industry alive in the next 10 or 20 years, there's no option.
Survive.
Exactly. And then there are also big industries that are finding very successful tools and solutions to transform waste into something that becomes a new product, a new value. So I think that this is really probably the big pain point, because we have the technology, science is working hard and is giving us the numbers, the tools, the data from where we have to start. We have also startup innovators that are offering tons of solutions, but we need now to connect the bridge, to connect the dots and arrive to the farmers to make this transition happening at the pace that is needed. So thank you so much, Simona, for bringing the farmers and the farming system perspective. And overall, I like also the opportunities we have as Italy, but also as Europe. Everyone needs to do. Thinking about Mediterranean before, but now we have also another speaker that is going to bring, again, a perspective that is going to highlight what's the role of Mediterranean, how and why it's important to talk about energy, climate, environment in the Mediterranean, and again, which are the opportunities for the food systems in the Mediterranean. So I would love to invite here President Angelo Riccaboni, the president of Prima Foundation. Buongiorno, Angelo. Buongiorno.
Buongiorno, good morning. So thank you for inviting me, and thank you for this very interesting conference. And you mentioned the Mediterranean, but also I would like to work on the previous words by Gramenos Mastroianni and Riccardo Valentini. Gramenos very clearly, as usual, highlighted which are the challenges of the Mediterranean area. And I just say that what he said, that in this area, the climate, the temperature is increasing 20% faster than in any other part of the world. That is enough. Okay. I shouldn't add anything to that. So we have many challenges in front of us. And I think that in the spirit of this initiative, I would like to highlight the need for a nexus approach. Nexus means putting together water, energy, food, and ecosystem resources. So we need to work in a systemic way. I think it's one of the major messages coming from the G20, that we need to work not by silos, but looking at these topics as they are strongly connected among themselves. So this is what we should do. So somebody should say, and what do you do to do that? Correct. So what do we do as Prima? Prima is, first of all, what is Prima? Prima is the most ambitious scientific diplomacy initiative ever launched in the Mediterranean, with a budget of €500 million, put by half by the European Commission and half by 19 Euro-Mediterranean countries. And Italy plays a key role, and the Ministry of University Research is the most important actor in this initiative. And I greet Luigi Nicolais because, and I thank him and the ministry for the strong effort put in this initiative. And every year, we as foundation implementing a strategic research innovation agenda, which is 7 years long. And every year we launch calls for 70 million euros on 4 topics. One is efficient use of water, one is sustainable farming, one is food value chains, and one is welfare, water, energy, food, ecosystem, resources, nexus. And this last issue for us is becoming more and more important, because what we see every day is that water, food, energy, our so related that we need to have a systemic perspective, which is very difficult in Prima, and is even difficult. We as scientists too often are really vertical. We think by silos. We shouldn't do that. So it is even difficult to find researchers and entrepreneurs who would like to, in a systemic way. So in order to promote it, we have already launched, I said, 5 calls. We have also recently launched a prize, an award for researchers and for practitioners to award good practices. So I think it was right a few days ago, the call for these awards. And on top of it, at the end of September, so I take this opportunity to promote it. At the end of September, we will have a major Mediterranean initiative organized by the European Commission, GRC, UFM. We are very proud of the partnership with the UFM, the Cyprus Institute, and PRIMA. We will have a major initiative in Cyprus, in Nicosia, to work on this issue, the issue of nexus, which we think is really crucial. And what we would like to see is how to make science not only as a driver of innovation, which is very important, but the role of science as interface with the policymaking process. I mean, the key issue now is how to bring science in the policymaking process. I mean, this is the key issue. And we know all that it is very difficult, but unfortunately, COVID showed that we need to bring science within the policymaking process. So we know it is difficult because politics and policies speak a different language from scientists and researchers, but we need to work in that direction. Maybe also conferences like these are helping in this direction, but this is a key issue. So key issues are 2. One is how to bring science concepts and like the nexus concept within the policymaking process. And the other major issue is how to bring the results of research innovation to our communities and our enterprises. So a clear uptake by them. Because we should stop saying that we should do something. We should do it, not just say that we should do something. We should do it. So this is the key task in front of us. I like, illuminating speeches. I like data, but now, every day we see on TV that we are really on crisis and we need to do concrete actions. So this is the reason why these 2 points, to bring science within the policymaking process and to facilitate the uptake of innovation by enterprise and communities, is crucial. It means that I should stop here.
No.
But only a few words more to say that for those interested in PRIMA, we are very proud that so far we have already funded 129 projects. This is the booklet, and I give as a gift to Sarah.
Thank you.
She has some document on top of it. I'm available to illustrate PRIMA to all of you if you like later. And 129 projects, and I'm saying that just to connect with the previous presentation. Maybe also you said that it's so important partnership. So if we want to tackle the challenges that Gramenos and Ricardo highlighted, we need to work together. We need to work together. We need to build bridges, not walls. And PRIMA is a major bridge. We want to work together in line with the SDGs number 17. And just to give you an example, a concrete example, in our calls, there is a rule which says that you need to have among the candidates also units from the south of the Mediterranean. So we have funded, as I said, 129 projects. We have 1,183 units working together. Every year we have 400 more. So in a few years we will have more than 2,000 units. And 30% of the money and 30% of the units come from the south. So I always say that we need 10 PRIMAs, a different Mediterranean scenario. I know it is impossible, but never say but, because there are some things which are changing. Europe has understood that we need to do more in Africa. UFM is playing a key role, a great role to promote partnerships. And also Prima is part of this conversation to be more active as a Europe in Africa. The future of the century is Africa, as everybody knows. So we need to be more able to work with African partners, and Prima is giving its contribution. In the future, we hope to give even a greater contribution, especially if, as it is happening, Italian government and more is with us. Thank you very much, Sarah.
And what you are saying is connecting us to the world of startup innovators, because actually Prima is very, very active also connecting all the ecosystems of innovators within the Mediterranean area. I think that the projects that are coming out are showing that this is the only way we have to see the future, and is I think it's a blessing to have the opportunity to connect organizations like Prima, like the Union for Mediterranean, like all the organizations that now are here sharing that they are available to support the broader ecosystem of science and innovation to make this thing happen fast. And the numbers that they were showing yesterday are telling us that we don't have time. When you hear we don't have time and you think about agriculture, you think that you need to follow some rhythm, or the rhythm of the nature, because when we think about the decade of action or 2030, we have to have clear in mind that we have 8 agricultural seasons ahead. So the agriculture is setting the pace of the transition sometimes. So in food is even more difficult because there are things that we cannot speed up just because we want. So we have also to wait for the rhythm of the nature. And so this is actually probably one of the most challenging things, because we need to deal with what the earth is answering and how the earth is reacting to our innovations. Thank you so much, Professor Ricaboni.
Thank you very much.
And I want to connect the breakups and innovations. And we wanted to have with us, within this, this panel, Daniel Gold. Daniel Gold is a great friend of the Future Food Institute, but overall, she's at the global level, probably one of the most renowned thought leaders in the food tech scene. Danielle started 10 years ago the Food Tech Connect. It is the most important platform in the world related to food and tech. And we wanted to have her voice here when we're talking about science, because what we have been seeing in these years is that actually innovation in food and tech are rooted in science. And what she's seeing now within the food system is that the transition towards the regenerative approach, the transition towards more science-based innovations is actually the major trend within the global food tech ecosystem. So thank you so much for being here, for joining us in Italy for this event. And we want to hear from your voice what you see from the global perspective, because your platform is global and you really are touching all the pain points on one side, see world, because we haven't spoken enough about that. Simona Caselli was mentioning a little bit the topic, but behind the transition, we need to support all the transition with finance, because we need to understand how we support also farmers and small startups to make this great innovation come to life.
Thank you so much for having me, Sarah. It's so nice to be here with all of you. So as Sarah said, I have a community of food innovators. We have over 47,000 innovators in 32 countries around the world. And what we've seen over the last 10 years has been unprecedented investment. There are tens of billions of dollars that are being invested annually into food startups. And then if you connect that with the investments of the large agri-food businesses, whether it's FMCG companies, whether it's agribusiness, There are billions of dollars that are being invested right now to create a more sustainable food system. And I couldn't agree more with many of the comments that were already made today about the importance of bridging policy, science, and the innovation side of startups. So where we're seeing there's the most right now is in the plant-based sector and in the biotechnology sectors that are going strategies, but they're not. We really need to start understanding where should the investments be made? How do we start to measure? How do we start to have guidance so that it's not just that you're saying, okay, we have Beyond Meat, for example, which is one of the largest plant-based companies in the world, globally. And they are being lionized as a company that is helping to save our planet by reducing meat consumption. And yet they're using peas that are grown in monocultures. And a lot of the companies that are in this space that are developing technologies are saying that they're reducing meat consumption, yet it's not the whole picture, right? So if you think about peas, for example, peas could be grown as a rotational crop that could help to build up soil organic matter, build biodiversity, sequester carbon, build up water, but that's not how it's being grown. So that's one consideration. And I think it's very critical for us to start thinking very strategically from a policy perspective and also from a scientific perspective. And as far as how are we incentivizing holistic innovation and not just so that we can tick a box that says we're reducing meat consumption. The other area that I would urge people to think about is on the biotechnology side. So because of food security, you have governments around the world that are starting to make serious investments in a lot of these technologies, right? And we see with Singapore, for example, with Singapore 2030, where the Singaporean government has committed to producing 30% of its food by 2030 for food security purposes. And so they are making huge investments into the biotechnology space, right? And so you see that Eat Just, another company, they're the first company to go to market with a biotechnology chicken, right? That you're able to, and soon, I mean, there are some predictions that the EU will be fast following us. And so there are a lot of considerations for us to think about when we think about biotech, the next revolution of biotechnology in our food, right? There's the ethics, there's the energy consumption, there's the waste streams. And what I urge everyone to think about is there are a lot of venture dollars that are going into this. This is the next space race, right? This is where people think this is how we're going to save the planet. And so we have to be thinking and thinking very critically about the ethics, the policy, to ensure that we, from a sustainability perspective, we are, but also that are ethical, that are not concentrating intellectual property in the hands of a couple of companies, right? That are not creating disadvantages for the communities in which these technologies are being, where the manufacturing is taking place. So I think that that's really critical. And the other area that I'm really focused on right now is, there's this movement around regenerative agriculture. A study we worked with Beef and Lamb New Zealand and New Zealand Wine. We did a half-year study on the state of regenerative agriculture in the US, the UK, and Germany. And then we also did a consumer insight study to understand consumer perceptions. So without a doubt, and even being in here in Italy to see the growth of regenerative agriculture And you see from a farm perspective, from an ecosystem services, as has already been mentioned, the birth of carbon marketplaces. You know, we see with the CAP in the US, the Biden administration is making huge investments right now in carbon farming and carbon banking. So this is certainly going to grow. But I think that it's very easy for us to think about the science and the innovation and not holistically about the business models and the financing. And so what I urge everyone to consider and think about is, when we think about regenerative systems, we have to think holistically, and we need to be building regenerative business models and regenerative financial systems that more equitably distribute value across all stakeholders, that include all stakeholders, that include the farmers, not that we're coming to farmers and telling them how they should farm, but that they're actually a part of designing what the systems are, because they know what they need to be growing. You know, they know what is best in order to support their soil, in order to draw down carbon, in order to support their communities. And while in Italy, you have these very robust small farming communities and a culture that is very attached and very close to farming. In most of the rest of the world, you don't have that, or in the Western world, you don't have that, even within the EU and especially within the US. So where I think that there's a lot of opportunity, as I said earlier, is to bridge the venture-backed innovation that's happening. It's critical that there is connections between the science and policy, and then for us also to think about, we can't regenerate using degenerative financial models. And so we have to rethink that. And I'm very excited. We're going to explore with Sarah some opportunities. Next year, we're going to launch a year-long investigation called Planet Positive Food and Agriculture. It's going to be a series that's going to happen online. We'll also have a community where we can bring together all of the stakeholders to investigate what are the best policies, the best practices from a business perspective, the science, to really have an impact across every part of the value chain. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Danielle. Overall, because you have been mentioning also some of the most critical scenarios that we see. You have been mentioning about the issue of proteins, the future of proteins. You have been talking about technology, how technology can really support the agricultural transition. And if we talk about those issues, sometimes at least coming from our nation, our world, we see the risk because has been announced, we see the risk of this global diet that can be imposed just because of climate issue and environmental issue. But I love what you were saying, because you underline the need of having an holistic perspective, and that we love to call the integral ecology approach, where actually when we talk about ecology, we should have a very holistic approach, thinking about the economical aspect, the political aspect, the cultural aspect, the human and the social aspect, and the environmental aspects all together. Because, and let's say, we're talking from the region that is hosting one of the emblematic communities of Mediterranean diet, for example. UNESCO underlined that Mediterranean diet is probably one of the most sustainable one, but it's been nominated as one of the World Heritage, not only because of the eating habits, because of the set of values, the set of practices, the cultural aspect, and many, many, many other values that are a combination that are making this asset as an intangible world heritage. And so this is the crucial part. Science, the approach, the technology, the digital acceleration, let's say, but also keeping in mind the cultural framework where we are adopting those technologies. Thank you so much. And now I want to involve Matteo Vignoli from the University of Bologna here with me, co-founder of the Future Food Institute. I'm going to leave you my spot. And we're going to jump into the second part of our journey. And now we've been talking about food for Earth. We have been talking about the nexus between food and the society, understanding also the perspective of Europe and understanding the perspective of the Mediterranean area where we are, because we are really in the heart of the Mediterranean. And now we're going to talk about food and science. Please, Matteo, I leave you my mic.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And to keep the time, I'll be very, very brief, because the most critical takeaway from the previous session that I want to bring in the next one is that I am a living example that science cannot save the world alone. As a few years ago, when we met, myself and Sarah were part of two different and sometimes disgregated ecosystem. I was part of the university and she was part of entrepreneurial world. And I have to admit, when I was thinking how to change the world with food, people were telling me, yeah, you should talk with Sarah. And I was like intellectually thinking, what can I do with a food entrepreneur? It's like, I'm coming from the university, what can we do together? And the meeting that we had led to future food. So we actually could do something together. We could, bridge two different worlds and perspective to make concrete actions. And, Angelo was mentioned that happening. So with this invite, I would like to call on stage Professor Luigi Nicolais, which is the coordinator of the Scientific Technical Committee of Fondazione IDIS, Città della Scienza, and many other things. But he's going to present us the role of research and what can research do to bridge the gaps to business, to entities and organizations around the world that can really make change into our society. Professor.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you also for the very nice and very up-to-date subject to this meeting. We are really touching many points that are of big interest for the future of Europe and for the future of the world. First thing I want to say, I was very pleased to be sitting here in the previous panel, and I found that there were many common points, and one of these was cooperation. Gramenos Mastroianni was saying cooperative economy, and then Simona Caselli, farm cooperation, and then Angelo Riccaboni, we need to work together. That, I think, is a key point. We have to learn that is nothing that we can do by ourselves. We cannot do anything alone. Also, you can be a right professor, very good professor, but if you don't, you can write a beautiful of your country, of development of the general global world. That's I think that's the point. Now we have finally put attention to environment, energy consumption, and food for Earth. Finally, I say, because we should really be done this many years ago, because the point is that we are in a position where if we don't do everything together, this attention, we don't put all together this attention, Europe by itself is a so small country compared to the rest of the world. We can do all our effort, but if Chinese, United States, but other countries, they don't take care of the environment, it's almost useless. We should do what we have to do, but we also should be very careful that everyone does what he has to do. what we need now, that we need in the production, we need to redesign processes. You know, all processes have been designed with some boundary condition. One of these was economy, was productivity. And so you design a process taking into account that your process should be more productive than another competitive process that is you already used. And this, now we have to put some other words inside. We need other key points, other boundary condition. And one of these is environment. Then we need to put more attention to the use of our product. So circular economy is a must, is not anymore an option. When someone designs something with a given material, should design starting from the cradle to the tomb. So he should know what is going to happen once that kind of object is not anymore used. So anything should be redesigned, taking into account what is the keywords and what are the most important parameters that we have to take into account now. Then we have to be really aware that digitalization is not anymore an option, is a must. We have to understand that the technology of paper and pen is over, is not our technology, but our technology is digital. That is an important issue because this is not problem of technology because the technology is already present. It's problem of social attitude. It's a problem of people that have to understand that they cannot just keep their data, but they have to put the data in common with others. And this is true mainly for the public administration. Because the public administration is not able to just undergo to this big transition just because people are not interested in just putting in common and work together with the same data. That's a big point. So this now for that we need that are started with the Italian law that was just putting money for blue sky research, for basic research, for fundamental research. I think we need to produce knowledge. That's really a key issue. We need to produce knowledge just without any kind of a possible application in the beginning. But we also need to try to bring this knowledge to business. That's the reason why we started with this government to just putting rather important amount of money for basic research. And then when we wrote our we put down from research to business in order to say you need to produce about when you one of the lab you can use the knowledge that you have there. That's an Italian problem. The number of, and with Canada are the highest, the biggest producer of knowledge, compared with, of course, normalized with the number of researchers, with the amount of money that are put in the expenses. But if you go to see how many people have used the knowledge, you see that we are very low in the score. That's the reason why we have to learn that the figure of researcher and the figure of innovator are different. The researcher is the one who is able to produce knowledge. The innovator has to understand the research, but has different objective. That has to bring this research into the market in just the diffusion knowledge but as Città della Scienza does, so in order to let all the people understand the research, because very often when the researcher speaks a different language than the normal people could understand. So you need this other kind of persons that are very important for the diffusing the knowledge, to let them understand what is the meaning, what is the difference between a virus and not be a very important professor to explain that, because for him it's obvious that there's a difference. So I think that's the way we are moving. This meeting is important because when we speak about food, when we speak about any other kind of point that we will discuss it, like environment, we need to understand that. In the PNRR, Italy and many people in Italy were just interested on how much money are coming. And so it's almost 200 billions of euros. That's beautiful. But what they want to have with PNRR is a change of mentality. We have to change our bureaucratic system. We need to be faster. We need to be faster in making a judgment. We need to be faster in developing new activities. We have to be faster in just translate the knowledge in application. That's what PNRR is really asking to us. And I think it's a beautiful time for young people at this moment. Surely the pandemic has been terrible, but I think in this moment we are changing everything. We have to be ready to something to which we are not used. And when you innovate, in front of you, there is something that is unknown, also for the market. But surely you try to stay in your own field because you feel safe. But that's not the moment. We have to change. We have to change everything. And really, I hope in this meeting that we are having today, all the 20 important people that are there will understand that the real point is not to be just stick to the privilege that we have, but to open to the needs that we have to look about and to try to forget the past, use the past as history, but look forward to the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Nicolais. Thank you. No, I want to just mention one thing which is really crucial. We have our research ecosystem. So it's very easy, as Prima Foundation was reminding us, to find cooperation among universities. Like most of my colleagues are just one phone call away. But how many entrepreneurs are one call away from scientists? And how many scientists are one call away from entrepreneurs? This is something that research should take into account, because we need to form this innovation ecosystem, which is not present yet in our world. And why we do that? We do that because we need to be faster to have this kind of transition that links research and entrepreneurs. Now I want to ask Dr. Marta Antonelli. She should be online. Thank you, Marta, and welcome. Thank you very much. She had the research at the BCFN. So she's one of the researchers that she proved to be connected between academia and society. And she will, present us how food consumption can link, resources and climate change. Marta.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for inviting me to this important event. I'm very honored to be here with you. So today we discuss different aspects of food system, which today are at a crossroad that requires immediate action. And in this context, I would like to emphasize that the role of the G20 countries in this process of transformation that we need to accelerate. The G20 countries represent, in fact, about 60% of the global population, 80% of its economic output, and something like 75% of greenhouse gas emissions at the global level. So I would like to point out that they have the power, the influence, and also the responsibility to address the challenges of food systems today. So the new FAO report on food security and nutrition highlighted that we are still very far from achieving the SDG 2, meaning ending hunger, addressing food insecurity and all forms of malnutrition by the year 2030. And this picture, this global picture, has been further exacerbated by COVID-19 pandemic. And so and is also going to get worse unless we tackle all these distortions that include interventions in the production, processing, distribution, and also the consumption of food. So changing food consumption is part of the change we need to make very fast. This is due to the contribution that food systems make, for example, to the release of greenhouse gas emissions, so up to 37% according to the IPCC. And this includes the different phases of food systems, so from farm to fork to disposal of the huge amount of food waste that we still produce at the individual level. So through a healthier and sustainable diet, we can reverse the global syndemic of climate change and malnutrition, but also act upon another huge challenge that we face at the global level, that is water scarcity. So despite at the global level, we currently withdraw about 10% of the total renewable water resources that are available on the planet. We have severe water scarcity in many places of the world. So it's noteworthy, I think, to mention that 2/3 of the global population already experience intra-annual water scarcity, which results, of course, in insufficient water availability to meet water demands in water scarce regions. And this is, for example, the driver of the dependency on food imports, something that has been referred to as virtual water trade, for instance. And just to put it in context, about 180 countries in the world are net virtual water exporters, with scarcity playing a big role in this. So climate change, population growth, urbanization, but above all, change in the food preferences as a result of the nutrition transition are big drivers of increasing water demands and of imbalances between shrinking supply and increasing pressure. So at the individual level, we use up to 6,000 liters of water per day to satisfy our agricultural, industrial, and domestic goods. This amount of water, which is huge, in fact, has been referred to virtual water. That is the water that has been embedded in every phase of production. So something that include, for example, not only direct water use, but also indirect water use, meaning, for instance, not only the water that you provide to raise livestock, but also the water that has been needed to produce the crops that are used to feed livestock. So this is to say that over 90% of the water footprint that we have at the individual level is related to food. And this includes not only fresh water, but also rainwater, a resource that underpins global food security, whose productivity is still below potential in many parts of the world. So I will conclude by saying that it is clear that we need to move towards more sustainable approaches to food consumption besides intervention on production. But this is not entirely up to individual motivation or willingness, because it requires political action, and it requires action that enables individuals to make this more sustainable choices. So I would conclude by just suggesting a few priority areas that I believe are important to achieve this change. So firstly, create an increasing enabling food environments that, in other words, can help individuals to choose sustainable food in an easy way as the default option. Secondly, invest in food education in school since early age until postgraduate level. This is fundamental. Thirdly, promote more actively sustainable, healthy, and traditional diets, such as the Mediterranean diet. This is one of the most precious heritage that we have in the Mediterranean countries and in Italy as well. And we really need to emphasize that by readopting these diets, we can not only live healthily and longer, but also release our pressure on the environments. Last but not least, I think it's important to establish food-based dietary guidelines that explicitly connect food, health, and the environment. And we know that these guidelines drive, for example, public procurement and so many other activities at the national level. Just to give one data, only 2 countries in the European Union explicitly do that. So I will end up here, and I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your words. I want to build on one of the priorities, which is education. And investing in food education is something that we at Fisher Food believe since the beginning. And we also think that it should not only be done at elementary school or when it's already being implemented, but should also be brought beyond. When we encounter scientists and PhD students in our boot camp, and we encounter many of them in the years, they said it was the first time that somebody studying agriculture was together with a lawyer in a boot camp. And we know how it's important that policymakers and scientists speak together, but in all their course of study, like 25 to 30 years, never happened. So we should rethink in the G20 how this kind of education takes place. Otherwise, we can ask people when they are 40, hey, you should work with others, but they never done so. They've been evaluated for all their life in doing something specific, and now we ask them to cross bridges, and that doesn't happen. So somebody that crossed bridges and was able to build this kind of thinking is Alfonso Pecoraro-Scagno, which I kindly invite here on stage. He's the president of the General Council of Univerde Foundation and ex-Ministry of Agriculture and many other exes, but we are more than interested in the future, not the ex. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you very much. I'm very glad to be here, particularly. And congratulations, because it was very difficult to organize something in the period of G20 in a beautiful city like Naples, that I know very well because I was for many times member of parliament elected in this city, in this beautiful city. And I was Minister of Agriculture, and after that I was also Minister of Environment when Gino Nicolais was my colleague as Minister of Innovation. So I have contact with very important scientific sector, also in in the Council of Ministers, because he was both, first a scientist and after also a little bit politician. I was more involved in. And also because my history is I was a lawyer, now I teach in the University of Sustainable Tourism in Milan, Rome, and Naples. So I still work always on sustainability. Also, when I founded the Italian Green Movement 30 years ago, and at that time, green was strange. What is green? What is renewable energy? What is organic agriculture? Now the problem is the opposite. Everyone speaks about green, but very few situations do really green. That's the problem. It's also a problem of G20. Now, every time we make statement and say we have to stop fossil 2020, 2050, 2040. Maybe they can sign also tomorrow. The problem is that if a thing makes some real action, or it's also a lot of very good ideas, but not real action. Now the problem is to do, not to speak about green. Because I was in May, I did the COP of climate change convention. And if I read all the things that we decide last years, I'm very scared because we decided we have to stop the emission below 400 parts per million of CO2. And now we are 420 and 30, and we are going every time ahead. So we need absolutely to make a real monitoring of what happens after we decide some things. Otherwise, we accept climate change that can become disaster, because now the problem is that the climate change exists. This is the first exists. If tomorrow we stop to use gas, fuel, and coke, for next 20 years we have a climate change important. Maybe we can avoid a disaster, the catastrophe. But now we need first work on how to reduce the problem with climate change. Every one of you watch at what happened in Germany, not a small country, Germany. And Germany is different from Italy. They generally are very organized, but they didn't make a good prediction, and they didn't do some work to reduce the problem of floating, even if are years and years that all the scientific sector, that's why we're saying, what the scientific, they say, you risk the extinction of Homo sapiens. And, oh, okay, just extinction. They say, we risk it is really incredible the difference between the very heavy alarm on this side and the very soft. In schools with guys that have 18, 20, and when it's normal because they don't want to extinct ourselves. Because the people of 20 years, or 15 years, 20 years, theoretically, according to what the IPCC said in United Nations Scientific Committee, it's not our four people that speak in a bar or in a pub. And they say, we have the risk at the end of this year, that means in 60, 70, 80 years, I mean, that means that a person 20 years now, when be 80, maybe can watch the extinction. I mean, it is an important thing or it's not? So the problem now is to work exactly according to what the scientific sector said, and we need absolutely some very important changing, not climate changing, a society changing. Because society includes also the economic sector, the financial sector, everyone. And now the financial sector and the economic sector is even more concerned than the political ones. Because the politics watch at the next election, that generally is every year, more or less. Because 1 year election in Germany, 1 year regional election, 1 year is another election. So it's every year is on election. So the politics watch in 1 year, 2 years. For luckily, the big fund, the big financial sector, they need a program for 20, 30 years. And so I joking said that the extinction of the consumers, or the extinction of the owners of this, maybe it's a problem also for economic and financial sector. So the extinction, maybe it's why I need a program of 30 years, 40 years, and maybe the extinction is a problem. You know? We need to do something. And so now some situations are stopping because of the financial decision, because nobody may put money or private money to open a Coke new central. Because they, in the prediction there. So we need now to use this moment, because there are a lot of money, not only the recovery fund money, there are much more money that are out from the fossil sector, and they are looking to make investment in real renewable energy sector. I'm speaking about climate. I don't want to exclude the food moment, but there is no food if we don't solve the problem of the, if we are extincted, we don't need the food. And so the problem now is do a big job to use all our energy of NGOs, because this is the side event, and I appreciate very much the NGO activity, because the official one is now a statement, generic, we are against the climate change. Yes, we are for renewable, perfect. And yesterday, our Minister of Energetic Transition said, okay, we need still to make perforazioni petrolifere, I don't know in English, some trivellazioni? Oil extraction. Oil in Italian Sea. And we need the transition, and we decided to do other research for fossil. What is logic? I waited a government that say we need some really important wind central in the sea, because people are afraid on the hill. Italy is a very good country of landscape, and so we have to reduce the impact on the landscape. But in the sea, we need to do the wind sector at the minimum in the sea. We have to do on all the roofs of this country. Yesterday I was with the mayor of Rome to the presentation of the plan of Rome that the sun cover half of all the roof of our capital of photovoltaic. But this is the idea of the project that we need after. How we arrive to this project, if we don't do every month something, we don't arrive to the target. And so we need this. Other side, the food. Of course, the food is incredibly important on this sector. You know that in Rome, next week, they open the pre-summit of FAO and on the sustainable agriculture systems before the summit in September in New York. And also I heard the speakers before that speak about Mediterranean diet. And this is another big moment, because one side, we have to arrive to an agriculture that is connected with the real sustainability, and that means a lot of things, you know, everywhere very well. The other side is the strange idea of a part of the United Nations to speak about a global diet. That is a multinational dream, but it's not the dream of the people. That idea to have a global diet of like artificial, one pill for proteins, one pill for vitamins, one pill. This is ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous, and never happened. That's it. It's always a situation of maybe some global foundation that put money on the idea of we have only one kind of agriculture for all the world, only one kind of food, of tradition of food for all the world. That is not a real world, it is an absolute situation. So Italy for sure in the international institution said absolutely not. We are not agreeing with this statement. We want to promote the Mediterranean diet and all the diet that comes from the tradition of the peoples. And we don't need to make a confusion. The confusion, what is the confusion? Because, for example, the Bill Gates Foundation, just to say foundation, they live in the States. In the States, they have a system totally based on meat. And it's a meat with hormones that in Europe is forbidden. And this tradition with the chicken, you can have a very incredible kind of situation, because the chicken is also in the dirty situation. After you say, you clean in a chemical way the chicken, and after it's a good. Our tradition is the control of the process of agriculture, not only on the product. We need to have a control of all the chain that is and particularly, we don't need a diet totally meat-oriented. On the diet, totally meat-oriented, more totally, for example, the cheese. And in Mediterranean diet, you have minimum part of meat, minimum part. And after, the big majority is, of course, fruit and vegetables, and is internationally recognizable as a good diet, but it's not the only one, because in India they have a diet mainly based on this, in other countries, because only in the state the situation, the big $1. Of course, in Hamburg, for $1, it is not possible that it's not junk food. Must be junk food. We need to promote the local diets of the world. Of course, it's big impact on the climate change. We can do this? Yes. We need to do this? Yes. And if we stay in a place that is food for health, the good food for health is good food also. The planet don't need to be defended by us, because the planet lives also without human beings. Every time we say we defend the planet, no, we defend ourselves. We try to defend Homo sapiens, and I hope also a lot of other animals that risk to be extinct with us. So the food for Earth must be a food that reduces the impact on climate change, give to the people also the amusement and the pleasure of food. Because in the Mediterranean diet is not only what you eat, but how you eat. It's a convivium that is the style. And we need a good activity for all the people that need good agriculture. We don't need GMO. The agriculture, I mean, the scientific culture is okay, but it's okay is in the way that the nature gives us the prosperity. Because otherwise we destroy the familiar agriculture, family agriculture, that is the big objective also of this meeting of United Nations. We need to help to stay on the ground, and also renewable energy. We need renewable energy, but not destroying the solar on the ground, but mainly the panel must be on the roofs, not on the ground. This is our job. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. You see, like the energy and also, you know, the challenge that we have ahead. One of that is agriculture, and we are going to speak about that with Federica Rossi.
Hello, can you hear me? Or can you see me?
Yeah.
Hello, good morning. I try to share my screen if possible.
Yes. Federica is going to introduce us a step change in agriculture, a joint approach, because to achieve what Alfonso Tocarello's Canyon was reminding us, we need joint initiative between farmers and institutions, between farmers and scientists.
Okay. Sorry, I don't know because the line is quite disturbed. So I don't know if you can hear me. Okay, may I go ahead?
But we cannot see your screen. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I thank you for the invitation, not just as a researcher of CNR, the Institute of Bioeconomy, but mostly on behalf of the Academia dei Georgofili that I represent here with pleasure, and I thank you for the opportunity to bring a voice in this today's strategic occasion. You know, academias are the communities of people that, okay, thank you, I see the screen now. People connected with the thinking and studying, and in specific, the word georgophily comes from the ancient Greek and means, as you all know, friends of agriculture. So it's from 1753 that almost 270 years that this academia promotes the progress of knowledge, the transfer of innovation in food production, the environmental connection between farmers and agriculture, and the social growth and the well-being. So we really feel extremely strategic today to be here at this meeting, mostly when we consider how crucial is the creation of a community that is committed, as was said before, that is able to work together for more sustainable and equitable food production, not just here, but the entire planet. So to push what Riccardo said before, that the metamorphosis we were talking before. I'm going to the next slide, so I don't know, because I don't see the screen, but as emerged in this conversation, what we really need is a step change to address our production system to a new form of agriculture that is that of course incorporates all the technology that we have. We said that Professor Nicolais pointed the finger on that. We have a lot of technological innovation, of course, the agriculture 4.0 approach, the use of intelligence, artificial intelligence, IoT, big data, precision farming. But we have to use that to be able to interpret them and bring to the real world. And also recover and restore some of what has been progressively lost, some more traditional practices that have low impact. So all of this, of course, considering the pressure of climate change and climate variability. So the need of optimize and the need to optimize the use of resources that are limited, as we know. So what are the main pillars of what is called the climate smart agriculture approach? First, as you can see, sustainable increase of production, productivity, and sustainability means also sustainability of income for farmers. Not just for farmers, but also for the community of actors that are involved in the value chain. With a concomitant and better generalized use of resources. We can still stay on the second slide, please. Okay, thank you. The second pillar is to adapt to climate pressure and become resilient, minimizing the impact due to climate change. And third, to be able to mitigate. Mitigate means to reduce emission or to increase the uptakes of greenhouse gases from crop and animal breeding. How this can be done and what we can do together to identify and put on place or put on operational a sustainable food production way through finding and adopting a climate resilient pathway and by increasing the effectiveness of local institutions and fostering a coherence between climate, agriculture, and environmental policies. And as was said before, link climate and financing. Okay, the next, please. As you may see here, the process is necessarily a multi-actor approach in which the actors span from farmers, the first to be directly interested. As Simona Caselli said before, they have to be informed, to be driven, because often they do not know. To technology providers that are industries, chemical, mechanical, packaging, just to mention some. To the last extreme of the chain, so the citizen and consumer and markets that we should really enable to recognize and appreciate the climate smart produced food. And finally, very strategic actors are the policymakers, who are the only ones that have the capacity and the specific rule to boost the innovative solution. Solution come from science, but go to policy. So what can be done, I would say, to dedicate a continuous attention to transfer processes, allowing science finding to be part of the real world. So the scientific results do not stay in the scientific world, but become operational, become tangible solution to support climate smart production processes. We said that the pillars are three: sustainability, resilience, and mitigation. And even if the science strives to produce results, to embrace the three of them, action at a global scale are really unachievable, because we have all time to consider the differences between the region, the climate, the geography, the social, the political aspect. So local scale adapted solution must be considered. In practice, then the approach is holistic, as we said, but application must be contextualized, so thought and applied to each context. So the next slide, I'm almost finished, in such a spirit, an effort has been provided by the academia, the G20 in the last month, when the lockdown was in some way awakening a higher common attention towards the rising social, economical health problem. We try to extract information from science and archive them in this initiative, the Academia for a Period Post-COVID, to archive them innovation that were mature, prepared for, in simple version, to be fruitful for the production, by the production sector, by the technician, by the farmers, by SMEs, and the site is updated weekly. So a lot of members of the Geography are active to do that. So contribution, you may see here, some titles are different, but many are climate environment, but not only. But all they are willing to support the step up of a sustainable food production chain and to favor this ecological transition path. So is my last slide. What we did, it was this initiative was really intended to be a contribution to enabling our environment, in which the instrument to, was the next slide and last one, please. I'm sorry that I was not able to share the screen probably. So we consider what we did as a contribution to enabling the environment, which the instrument, we provided the instrument to boost innovation that flow from science to policy and government, in line, of course, with the aim of today's meeting to foster a coordinate action agenda and to move to a systemic approach to make our agriculture to go towards an ecological transition. I thank you very much with this last slide. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Federica. We do believe that a systemic approach together with an enabling environment is really what we need to push for in our G20 countries, so that farmers, not only in a specific region, but across all countries, can really share practice trustworthy. Now I welcome Giorgio Marcucci, he's the director of the Institute of Bioeconomy, because sometimes trust is not only about people, but it's also about economic system.
Good morning to everybody, and thanks for the invitation. Good morning to everybody, and thanks for the invitation. I hope you can hear me. I will share my screen. Can you see the screen? Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So thanks for the invitation, and thanks to all the other speakers that actually gave already a picture of the situation in which we are living, and I will try to address and contribute to the discussion, trying to assess the sustainability of future food production. We have a challenge, a grand challenge for agriculture and natural resources, that is to double agricultural production and reducing the use of resources, and so we have to use sustainable intensification and multifunctionality. Actually, the water, food, energy nexus that also was targeted by Angelo Riccaboni is we have to face increasing food needs. We have raising population and changing dietary style. We have to use and reduce limiting resources. We have to have more efficient use of resources for agriculture, and we have to mitigate global change. And we still have to produce sustainably food, feed, and also forest sourcing, and also to adapt to climate change. Actually, for the sustainability agriculture, this is the example of the use of water. 70% of fresh water is used for agriculture, with different, according to the different region of the world. But still, more than 80% of the damage and loss in agriculture is related to drought, and maybe also for this reason that the agriculture is using a lot of water. Also, agriculture is a potential threat to diversity. You see here the diversity in 2000 and 2030, and actually agriculture and infrastructure are the major problems that we will have for the future. Also, we have to mention that land has changed a lot. Historically, we have population, and also in terms of socio-economic organization, we have less farmer. In this red rectangle at the end of the slide, you see the let's say our area, and also the red thin line is the present. So in the future, we may have less farmer, but still to feed more people. Also, we had a change. You see changing in the cover of Europe since 1900, and actually we have increased a lot of the forest and grassland, and also the city cover of our planet. So this is related to intensification of the agriculture, surely, and also to global trends and import that maybe we are unsurely, as Riccardo Valentini showed, we are importing a lot from abroad. But actually, what about the future? We may consider the potential of land sparing. So just to dedicate and to increase the efficiency of resource use in some of the more suitable fields, and then to reduce the pressure in other fields. So here is a modeling analysis. You see on the left the current situation, and actually if the model are fit with maximum land sparing, so to increase the efficiency of use and to use the most suitable land, we may have 50% less need of agricultural land still producing the same amount of food. And if we have a targeted land sparing scenario, so considering reducing the pressure in the biodiversity hotspot, and in 40% less need in the future if we properly make more efficient our production. And actually, the two scenarios are get with the same use of resources even more efficient. Also, we have crop diversification. This could be a tool for biodiversity and to maintain all ecosystem service. This is a nice meta-analysis just came out in June, considering agroforestry, cover crop, cultivar mixture, and intercropping, more than 5,000 experiments all over the world, although there were mixing situation in different regions. And actually, the green line is the zero. Everything that is on the right of the green line is improvement. And actually, using these crop diversification strategies, there is an improvement or almost all the supporting services, but also on the provisioning. To potentially assess the suitability of land for, let's say, intensive agriculture, biodiversity, hotspot. For example, here is the yield suitability map, unstable, the areas that are not suitable for agricultural production. So just a few cents for final reflection. I will try to be positive. Actually, we know that big challenges come together with big opportunities. We know the risk. Actually, the previous speaker have talked a lot about risk. We are aware that we have to act maybe not enough. This is a question mark. Actually, we have the tools and the people, researcher and farmer particularly, but also capacity building is key, as Federica Rossi just pointed out. And basically, we have to move to sustainable and diversified intensification for conventional and intensive and even organic agriculture. So this is our target. Thanks.
Thank you very much, your talk left me with 2 points. One is the huge opportunity we have in front of us, like 50 or 40% efficiency gap on land use. It's huge, and also the value of cooperation in agriculture goes beyond what we know as cooperative, because there is this cooperation on data, like something that we can really capture together and use in bulk to change our system. And with that, I would like to welcome Mauro Cendrito, which is connected, and thank you for waiting, and sorry for the 15 minutes delay. He's director of CNR Institute of Sustainable Plant Protection, and he's going to talk about change of direction from urgent climate threats. And Professor Cendrito, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm trying to share my screen. Can you hear me, and can you see my screen?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much again for the invitation, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this very important conference. Well, I go back to the risks, because we all know that we are facing grand trends, grand challenges that will likely disrupt the food and nutrition security as we are moving from the Holocene to the Anthropocene. And we could risk to move from the greenhouse climate state to the hothouse climate state. Now, if we look at this graph, which shows the temperature fluctuation changes over the past 100,000 years, we can see that most of these 100,000 years were characterized by a glacial period, with the difference of the last 12,000 years, which is the current epoch called Holocene. The Holocene, it is a very stable epoch that in fact the maximum temperature variability on Earth during the Holocene has been plus minus 1 degree. The Holocene is the only equilibrium state of our planet that we know that could support our world. During the Holocene, environmental changes occurred naturally, and Earth regulatory capacity maintained the condition that enabled basically the human development, the great European civilization, nowadays civilization. But we are moving from the Holocene to a new era. If we look at this graph, the IPCC report on 2014 shows that without any mitigation measures, the Earth temperature will go up by 4.5 degrees. So this means that we are moving to a new epoch, the Anthropocene, in which the human action may be the major driver of global environmental changes, with potential catastrophic consequence for a large part of the world. So this increase in temperature, 4.5, has no precedent in human history. The work by Burke et al. In 2010 shows, please see the blue line, that if this unmitigated increase in temperature occurs 4.5 degrees, we actually go back by the climate, Earth climate goes back by 10, 20 million of years, and the Pliocene and the Eocene can provide the best analog for the future climate. Even by 2030, without any mitigation measures, the temperature could go up by 2.5 degrees. This means that we rewind the climate back to 3 million of years. This is something that we, the human history, has never experienced, and this challenge very much the capacity of adapting to climate change. So, because this could also cause the so-called global cascade of tipping points, the points of no return, that will basically cause the transition to a less habitable hothouse climate state. For more details, please see this paper published in 2010, Trajectory of Earth basically towards the Anthropocene. And also why we should state it is very important to have a peaceful and sustainable development, to have to remain in a Holocene-like state. This is very important. Also because in the future, it is quite clear, so the agricultural land covers about 50% of the total habitable land. And in the future, it is this land will basically may not change. The agricultural land will stay in a quasi, will remain in a quasi stable because Riccardo Valentini showed that there is a lot of deforestation, but deforestation land, deforested is very fragile, it degrades very rapidly, and if we don't stop deforestation, and we will run in a huge problem of disaster and accelerating climate change. So cropland, it is expected not to increase in the future, and 77% it is used for livestock, meat and dairy, and only 23% for growing crops. And so, as Giorgio was saying, we must increase productivity of this land with new technological breakthrough, and also because we are facing the soil sealing is increasing worldwide, especially in Italy. We have a huge problem. Every year we lose about 17 hectares per day because of soil sealing. This brings another issue. Our beautiful, gorgeous Mediterranean diet. This graph shows what is the share of habitable land that would be used to agriculture if everyone in the world would adopt the same diet. So Italy is here just below France. So if everyone in the world would adopt the Mediterranean diet, we would need 120% of habitable land. So this is not sustainable. And this may cause a lot of problem for Italy, for European countries. Because of land degradation, because of increase in population, the cropland available for per capita cropland available has already gone down. In 2013 was 0.2 hectares. Nowadays it is 0.117 hectares. And with soil sealing in Italy, we may face in a few years a global food shortage. And generally speaking, if the current agricultural system will remain unchanged, we can expect a global shortage of 214 trillion calories by 2027. And in Mediterranean, Gramenos Mastroianni explained very well why the Mediterranean is a hotspot for climate change, because the Mediterranean is covered by drylands. Dryland means that crop agricultural productivity is limited by water. And if we look at the future, the scenario is very dramatic, because Italy and the whole Mediterranean are among the countries. Italy is among the countries that will face in the future serious water shortage, about 30% of probability that we will face water shortage. So we know that we have to increase water productivity. We know we have to increase water efficiency. We know that we have to produce more crops per crops, but we have to maintain a stable planet. We have to maintain our planet in the Holocene-like state, because if we run into the Anthropocene, it will be a disaster, and the whole system will collapse. So to do that in the face of increasing human pressure and shocks, we need a radical thinking. We need to go into a transformative, disruptive future and address these 6 major transformations that are interconnected: human capacity, consumption, production, decarbonization, digital revolution, smart cities, and of course, food biosphere. Now, we have to reorient our research policy to confront the perfect storm of global threats and challenges that are threatening our food future and agriculture systems. In Italy, then we have also another major transformation to need to stop soil seeding. So what are we doing in CNR together with Francesco Loreto, that we speak a little bit later? Last year, we started a joint research center with the Italian national gas and oil company called Water Hypatia d'Alessandria. It is based in Metaponto in the southern Italy, in Thailand, basically. And in this center, we are tackling all the problem water related to agriculture. We will mostly work on 2 main aspects of agriculture management, starting new advanced high throughput platforms for plant phenotyping, and then developing new prototypes that will be operating from next year, basically, to treat and reuse urban wastewater for irrigation, of course. Urban wastewater, it is a huge issue, very important, because in many areas of the Mediterranean, in dry areas, it is the only source of fresh water available for agriculture, and there is no competition for this fresh water. So that's what we are doing, and we do hope that this new research center, joint research center, will be a kind of important strategic research center for the Mediterranean for the water issues in agriculture. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. We learn nothing is sustainable at the global level. We need to act locally, and but local things can really impact the global scale, like in migrations and climate threats. So we spoke about that with Antonello Pasini. I asked him to stay on the clock, otherwise we cannot finish our meeting. Professor Pasini.
Okay, thank you very much to the organizers for my invitation, and to the previous colleagues for having just done a very big step towards the nexus between agriculture and food. I would like to share my screen now. I will see if I can. Okay. Can you see my screen? My presentation? Yes? Okay. Thank you very much. I would like to speak about very briefly about the nexus between climate change and agriculture, but also the impacts on conflicts and human migration in the world. So very briefly, as well known, the increasing CO2 concentration can be positive for the growing of plants, no? But if we exclude the importance of other parameters like temperature or changes in the water cycle, if we take all together, we have to model our situation. And in the world, this is the situation from a paper by Francesco Tubiello of the Food and Agriculture Organization, published some years ago in a book edited by me. The situation is quite simple if we consider just the influence of climate change on the growing of cereal plants here. So this is an index of growing of cereals. As you can see in the so-called developed countries, that is to say USA, Canada, Europe, Russia, Siberia, and so on, we will see an increase in production, in agricultural production, due to the increase of CO2, of course, but also to the increase of water availability at these high latitudes, and also to the fact that some terrain like that of Siberia can be free from permafrost in the future. So this terrain can be used for agricultural development. So there is an increase here, but in the so-called developing or poor countries, there will be a very clear decrease because of, very high temperature, very shortage of rainfall resources and so on. So you can see that climate change tends to exacerbate the inequity that there is in the world in the production of agriculture. But climate change has also an impact not only on agriculture, but also on conflicts and migrations, sometimes directly, sometimes indirectly by means of lack of yields. I will track very simply just two examples. This is the example of a Syrian crisis, which was cited before just from by Garamenos Mastroianni in his talk. Here we had from 2007 to 2010 a very severe drought, and the farmers lose completely their yield. They migrated towards Syrian cities, and of course in the degraded peripheries. And there were conflicts for the water resources, but also for food. And if you think that there was a speculation on the prices of the food, and there was a quite corrupt regime, you can see that here this very severe drought, which was almost impossible in pre-global warming conditions, created and triggered a crisis, the civil Syrian war, which led more than 1 million people towards the Balkanic route towards Europe. So really biblical exodus of people through the Balkanic route. But you know very well that migrants in Europe comes also from these boats. And you know, these boats depart from Libya, but the migrants here come from the 90% of these migrants which reach Libya come from the so-called Sahelian region, which is a region in which there are 10 fragile countries, because they are characterized by very fragile economy, based especially on a purely subsistence agriculture. And here the climate change is not a primary cause of migration, but is a cofactor. It is a co-driver of conflicts and migration. Why? Because here there is of course, a climatic problem, that is to say desertification. You see here, the Sahara is coming south, and the degraded lands become gradually land of desert. But there are also other problems, such as conflicts and food riots in this region, and also, for instance, terrorist attacks. So here, the climate change is not a primary cause which trigger by itself a conflict or immigration like in Syria, but it is a cofactor which amplifies and accelerated the crisis just existing there. A very clear example is the situation of the Lake Chad. The Lake Chad is in the middle of the Sahelian region. You can see here the blue surface is the area of water in the middle of 60s. You can see in the 2000s what is become this area. There is a reduction of 17 times of the surface of water there. Of course, this is not due only by climate change, but also by incorrect actions on water detection of water and so on. But at the end, the situation is this. That is to say that in this situation, farmers and shepherds are in conflict for water resources. So some conflict become to be there, and some internal migrations. And then when the last chance for these people is to reach Libya and to come to Europe. So this is the situation. These are the migration from Syria through the Balkanic route. These are the migration from the Sahelian region through the Mediterranean. So, how much is important climate change in this situation? We know that recently there were the so-called Arabian Springs. There are a lot of conflicts of other origin, that is to say, for instance, ethnic conflicts. So in this study of 2 years ago, Stefano Mendel and me wanted to study the importance of climate change before the Arabian Springs in order to see better the influence of climate. As you can see here, we are in the period 1995-2009, and we model the migration flows from these 10 countries to Italy through a nonlinear model in which we used just meteoclimatic parameters like temperature, precipitation, the number of hours during the growing season when the temperature was higher than 30 degrees Celsius. And also, these are direct influences from meteoclimatic events. And then also yields, which is indirectly driven also by meteorological and climatic effects. So you can see the black line here is the observed migration from these 10 countries to Italy during the periods 1995-2009. The red lines are the ensemble runs of our model, and the blue line is the ensemble mean of our model. As you can see, we are able to explain almost the 80% of variance in the variability of the interannual migration from these countries to Italy. So this is a very important hint that also before, and especially before the Arabian Springs, climate change was very important for migration. Now, in this situation, how to act for solving together climate change problem, migration problem, and so on. You can see here the Millennium Goals. We have to act in a systemic manner, not in a holistic manner, not in a technocratic manner, because we have to solve one problem together with the others. And this is an example of a win-win strategy. For instance, why not to recover the degraded lands of the Saharan belt. How to do this? It is quite simple, because in these lands there is always a rainfall during the rainfall season, but the rainfall is so heavy that is not absorbed by the terrain. So if you make big holes where the rainfall can stay for days and weeks and so on, at the end of the rainfall season, we have, for instance, a pasture. This has a very little cost, $100 per hectare. And these costs are very lower than the cost of, I don't know, militarization of the Mediterranean, of the walls, and so on. So we have to go toward these synergic strategies. The last slide is this, on this cascade of phenomena, because we don't have to think locally, but we have to think globally. Because in this example, the ice melting and the Arctic amplification towards a cascade of phenomena can influence the drought in the Sahel. Okay, I leave you just two little references. The first one is a book of mine and Gramenos Mastroianni that unfortunately is only in Italian for the moment. And this one is the study in which Stefano Mendel and me studied the migrations from the Sahelian belt to Italy before the so-called Arabian Straits. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. Something that really captures my attention is that, like William Gibson says, the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. So we are looking at also our future if we don't act by looking at what's happening in the sub-Saharan Africa. And with that, I would ask to Francesco Loreto to give the final word of this session. I asked him to be very concise. He's professor of plant physiology at the University of Naples, Federico II, and also president of ISPA CNR, and long friend of Future Food Institute. Professor Loreto.
Thank you very much. I am aware of the fact that the time is very short, and actually, it's very easy when you end a session with so many fantastic speakers who really set the ground and said about everything I could also say. So let's share my presentation. Let's see if I can. Can you see my presentation? I don't know if you are seeing.
Yes, we see.
Okay, I try to. Okay, now you should see full screen. Okay, as it was said, I am a professor at the University of Naples, Federico II, and also a member of the scientific committee of Città della Scienza. So the first slide is actually an advertisement for Città della Scienza, and this is the next edition of Futuro Remoto, the Festival of Science that Città della Scienza every year prepare, and this year will be about transition. So exactly what has been discussed so far, particularly in our case, the ecology transition. Now I will go really fast because this is just a recap of what everyone has said, and I'm very glad to say that, rarely I've seen so much consensus among scientists. In general, scientists argue a lot about their ideas and strongly support very contrasting ideas, but this is not the case. I can see. So there are drivers of the crisis that we have. It's a real crisis now. The population increase has driven the consumption of fossil fuel. Fossil fuel has increased the CO2 in the atmosphere, and this has raised the temperature. And this trend is continuing, and we need more and more energy, more and more water, and more food. We 1997, the Paris Agreement in 2015, and now the 2030 Agenda with their Sustainable Development Goals. Mauro Centritto has shown the risk of going from a greenhouse Earth to a hothouse Earth. This is exactly what we are experiencing. Consequences may be very bad for the humanity and for agriculture. Enhanced drought, soil salinity, in particular extreme events. I didn't hear a lot about extreme events, but we have a very good example dated a few days ago in Germany. So we know, you know what I'm talking about. Let me address very rapidly this from the plant side. From the vegetation side, vegetation has three options since plants don't move. Well, they move very slowly, and so they can migrate, but generally migration is too slow. Will be better for the 2080 projection. So the new green revolution must be based on three concepts, at least: adapt, be resilient, optimize the use of resources, and find the new resources. And the good news is that climate smart agriculture, as we have seen also previously, as an armament of new technology. So bad, you see that.
So Loreto, maybe you can try to remove the video.
Sorry? Can you
maybe
hear
you can
me?
try to remove. Yeah, you can remove the video because the sound comes quite noisy.
Okay, but now I am in the stop video. Okay.
Switch off your camera so that maybe we can hear you better.
I did it.
Yeah.
So I hope that now is better. So Europe cares. This is the other good news because there is the European If we stop Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Lorenzo. Actually, I feel that we need to act a little bit as translator with this digital technology. The take-home message I really share with you because it's incredible the power of plants and the power that can research can give to plant if we are able to increase photosynthesis and to really reduce the level of CO2 in our atmosphere. So thank you very much to all our speakers. Sorry for being a little late. Sarah, welcome back here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Matteo. It's always a very big challenge to follow the live online and in real time, in real life. We know that online everything was going well, so we're gonna take our time to really hear and pay attention to all the beautiful presentation and meaningful presentations we have been hearing this morning. Here we are. I think we had so many inspiration and we had the clear understanding on how urgent is the issue, how fast we have to act. And I would love to invite here with me for this little closing, the Ambassador Pierre Benbust. He is the permanent representative at the UN in Rome from Switzerland. And I wanted to invite Pio with me because today we are starting a journey. Matteo was mentioning a little bit before about what we are doing. And today we're starting a journey here in Naples, where the big ministers from all the G20 countries are meeting. But the Food for Earth journey started many years ago. And in this week is going to start to connect policymakers, scientists, but also youth, young activists and innovators, farmers. And so from now on, we're going to start to connect the dots. So this afternoon, we're going to move in a campus that is entirely inspired to integral ecology. And from tonight, we are going to start to talk with young, bright minds. We have been talking a lot about transition. We have been talking a lot about transformation. And this is the reason why I wanted to have Pio Venups, because he started an incredible project that is called Bites of Transformation, that he transformed even transformation. And so I think that Pio, with the mind of a diplomat, with the long experience in diplomacy, really identify which is probably what we need now. So involve bright and young mind and young energy to start to fill this gap. Pio, help us to close this very dense morning and very challenging morning.
Sarah, can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That's the last question. Okay. Thank you for inviting us. We came a small group that we are actually the group of young ones, not only witnessing but actually leading this kind of process that we started. That is, the name is Bites of Transformation. It's because it doesn't want to be pretension. Bites means just give some bites. It's not, we know perfectly that it's not just 2 or 3 or one single initiative that is going to change the world, but there is, what is important is this kind of initiatives start going in the same direction. And therefore, we would like to thank already the organizers of the Food for Earth G20 edition to having us here. So I try to be brief. And you know, I mean, you've been hearing all this morning how difficult it is to be brief, and how is difficult, even though we are living in a sometimes with digitalization, even though this will be part of our future. They were brought up, even though sometimes interrupted by in the conversation, we're quite clear. Now, what is not clear, at least to us, and maybe even to me as represented in Switzerland, to the United Nations in Rome, to the food, let's say, food hub, is how we get to this famous political will that gets all of us together going the same direction. And is there a same direction, as to say? And maybe what I could say is systems don't change unless the perception that is needed, that they have to change, is becoming impressive. So unless it's an innovation that kicks in from outside in a very strong manner, changes, systems don't change. In agriculture, this is what we have seen. The big changes come with crisis. Okay, now everybody's been talking about crisis, and now the problem with crisis is that actually within crisis solutions are already there, but we are so much taken by the crisis feeling that we actually, all what we do is tend to be a reaction to what is happening. So what we were trying to see is that it's quite simple with Bites of Transformation. So when Secretary General Gutierrez decided to convene the Food System Summit in 21, he did it on the concept of urgency. This came from the Future is Now presentation of Greta Thunberg, and one of the pillars that was considered not sustainable is the food pillar, right? And so at the beginning, as other countries as well, we thought, okay, this will be, we will get to the declaration of states, most probably through an intergovernmental negotiating process. And then in the past, we've been witnessing already negotiating processes like transboundary management of water, how difficult it is to even get a word, transboundary water management, into the political arena because of the interests. Now you can imagine food systems are very complex and interests are diverse, at least, and even divergent. So it's very difficult to actually imagine At the political level, we just a simple 2 years long process to come to something that is something that all countries on earth will buy in. We've seen it. We've seen it in the preparatory process of the Food System Summit. It's not that easy. It will be a very good declaration. It's not the point. The declaration will be there and will be a good one. The point is this will be the legitimacy of this declaration, since there will be no intergovernmental negotiation. So countries might opt in or opt out from this declaration according to their interests and their will, unless what is the intention to transform an intergovernmental negotiation into a people's summit, and this is the reason why we are here in this moment as a representative of the public, if you want, of the public sector, in the Food for Earth meeting. The point is trying to transform this process in a people summit. This means bringing the legitimacy of the work that all you are doing. Now we said, okay, that's very easy to say, and how we do it? How we, in the words of the experience of the cooperative system of the Emilia-Romagna, except that I know it a bit because I studied in Bologna many years ago, but how we keep the unifying element that is needed in order to have a shared political will, because this is not obvious. So we decided to set up this project, Bites of Transformation. And also we said, okay, instead of talking about crisis, let's take some of the givens for the future. The population dynamics are clear. There will still increase of population. There will still rapid urbanization is going on. In Africa, it's very rapid. Climate change, now you received all the information needed if still necessary. It's given, including the water and other livelihood assets, resources, access to the resources. Digitalization, technologies and so on will go on, will improve, we will get there. So this means interconnectivity will be much stronger in the future. And the use of tech can be, if it's done in a smart manner, can actually work. Now the point is that work for what if we don't have a unifying message? And this is what we try to do. We say, okay, let's have a look. Let's project ourselves into a future, 15, 20 years in the future. And in order to do that, it doesn't make any sense that I'm doing it. I'm at the end, if you want, of my working time. So let's have a group of young ones are sitting there, among others. You project yourself into the future, and you see if you manage to agree on where you want to go. Where do you see, where you want to see yourself into 15 years? I know it's very heavy asking this. It's not working. So we perfectly know it's not putting a burden, but it's simply saying, okay, if you can spell out in a unified manner what you would see as your future, then here we today can still act and do something for you. Because actually we have to do something. It's not just simply the future is yours, you go, right? The future is yours, tell us where you would like to go, and then we try to help you out. And this is basically also the messages of several foundations that are supporting projects is a little bit going in this direction. So this Bites of Transformation basically transformed itself in a process where only one rule was there. The 50 or 60 participants from the area, Switzerland, Italy, Mediterranean, and then got a little bit larger, Hong Kong, Latin America, and Sub-Saharan Africa, and so on. The young ones had a simple task. Look at the population dynamics and so on, what I said at the beginning, that they will be as a given. We know that changing habitats means also changing habits. If you are living in Cairo and working in the city, you are not going to commute back at home, whether you have money or whether you're working, exactly as it is in Zurich or in Lagos. Simply the conditions are different, right? But you have to set up a system that works there as well for urbanized situation. Okay, so basically we give only one rule. The rule is work on something that is unifying you and not dividing you. Whenever you are not agreeing on something, okay, you might disagree, but then come with a proposal and you discuss it within the group. This was one element. The second element is that all the young ones are not doing the same business. One is an architect, another one is a farmer, a third one is a chef, a fourth one runs a restaurant, and so on. There is one city planner, etc., etc. All people with completely divergent interests, and not all of them knowledgeable of food systems. Okay, they together, they did something that for me already found it a small miracle. They created a manifesto, just 2 pages, not linked to time, not linked to space, but I only want to see your future. And then from there, deriving something in common, defined in common. And of course, it gets to the point that you have to modify your habits, your habitats. And when you change systems, this means changing a lot of stuff, right? Then from there, deriving some few lines of action and even projects. This is the point that I'm trying to make to conclude. If you want to change a system, it's not saying that all of us, we have to produce in the same manner, or all of us, we have to eat the same thing. No, but all of us, we have to have an image of how far and where we want to go in general as societies. And then you apply, according to this situation, you apply your ideas in a different manner. We have a project that came out, how you change the life in a refugee camp. Refugee camps were thought to stay there for 5 years. They are there for 70, 80 years, and actually they are cities. But still they cannot produce in the refugee camp because of political reasons and so on. Still they depend on WFP bringing its bag of rice 70 years after. Doesn't make any sense. No, doesn't make sense. So you can apply this manifesto, if you want ideas, to this reality, but also to the reality of Switzerland, my one. That is a very urbanized agriculture. Why we had a vote just a few weeks ago. Many of them of the Swiss guys are quite disappointed. But actually, if you look at the result of this vote, it made perfectly sense. The vote was about eliminating pesticides in agriculture, totally, right? And it went, I think, 45 positive and 55 negative, no. So it didn't go through. You know that Switzerland is a country where we vote for, right? Which is actually good. And then if you look at the granularity of the 45%, you could find that cities, more than 50,000 people living there, they voted yes. The more you go to villages that are part intrinsically of the rural reality and rural production, which is intertwined, they are a little more cautious because they don't know how we do that. Not because they don't want it, but they don't know how to do it now. So by taking these elements, then you can come up with projects that actually are using the capacities of research centers, institutions, policy advisors, and so on, but with a purpose. This is what we are trying to say. Do it, but with purpose. You want to get, and thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for all the people following us online, and thank you all for being so patient today. I think that you reached the point. We need to involve them as much as we can, and we need to involve the broader society in this complex system as much as we can. Thank you all, and enjoy and follow the works inside the G20 summit, but also spread the word and get in touch with the ones that are activating communities, innovation centers, in accelerators. So be part of the change. Thank you, thank you, thank you.